Did you watch the Rubio hearing?
I did not watch any of the hearings in their entirety. I did the American thing of watching clips and reading people's coverage of it.
Oh, awesome. Uh, I can't blame you though. So the Rubio hearing, everyone loves Marco. Everyone loves Marco. He's gonna go. He might get 90 votes. I don't know if he'll get like 100, but maybe. Or no, he can't get 100 because his seat isn't filled yet. So maybe he gets 99. Who's to say? But everyone loves Marco. It was such a wholesome hearing. Republicans and Democrats across the board were very happy for him. They were very excited for their colleague.
I
Tammy
can't tell if you're being
Duckworth.
sarcastic or not. I can't tell the
No, I'm being
sarcasm yet.
serious.
Okay.
Everyone
All right,
loved
all right,
Marco.
all right.
He gave such a professional hearing, and there was no fighting. Everyone loved him. And Tammy Duckworth, the Democratic senator here from Illinois, you might know her. Or not. You might know of her. She's an Iraq War veteran. She's in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
She lost, I believe, 3 of her limbs to an IED, something like that. So she's in a wheelchair, and she told a story about how she wanted Congress to allow you to bring newborns or to breastfeed inside the Senate building. And Marco Rubio joined her in that. And he said, Tammy Duckworth, I support it. And he backed her in it. And they won the fight on that. And now they can do that, which is great. And so she told that story. A lot of them told their stories about how they like Marco Rubio. It really goes to show that the Senate, if the House is middle school, the Senate is like, I don't know. They all like each other in the Senate. In the House, that's not true. But in the Senate, everyone's friends. And so they're all very excited for him. And so he's going to get through fully and entirely, which is great. Shout out to Marco Rubio.
You know who doesn't like Marco Rubio? Yeah, the Russians.
Like
I noticed in their coverage of the hearings, which I think is interesting to see how they look at I'm always fascinated to see like how our adversaries are looking at our political happenings, and they refer to him as Little Marco.
Well, that's what Trump called him in 2016.
Is that why? Okay. All right.
Yeah, Trump said you have small hands, and then Marco Rubio said, well, you have a small dick. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen on a debate stage. So, yeah, that's what happened there. No, wait, I have it all wrong. Marco Rubio said Trump had little hands. Then Trump said, well, you have a little dick. And then Trump called him Lil Marco because he's short. So,
okay,
that is what happened. Sorry for everyone. I didn't want to spread misinformation. I was trying to remember 8 years. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, no, they don't like him because he's going to. Rubio's going
to get approved. Rubio's going to get approved. That's like one of the least controversial picks that's been made. So like that has not been one that's been really. He's pretty vanilla when it comes to it, right? Like we know what the guy feels about a lot of things. The only thing up in the air really is how will his views change now that he's in this new role serving as Secretary of State? Will they be drastically different than his time as a senator? Time will tell, as it is with everybody, but nothing out of the ordinary there.
Well, yeah, I also will say about Rubio is maybe not good news for him. I've seen Politico, I've seen Punchbowl, I've seen Semaphore, all write articles about how, well, Marco Rubio is not going to last long. And that's interesting. I believe Rex Tillerson, did he even last a full year? I don't know. But they think Rubio is out within the first 180 days. I think he might last longer than that.
That's a good 6 months.
Although, who's to say? So maybe that's not good news for him. But we shall go. Preston, if you recall, you and I had a lovely Subway lunch at the Pentagon. And soon, who knows if we'll get invited back, Pete Hegseth looks like he will be confirmed. I'll give my thoughts here on the second, but we'll recap the hearing. The hearing was long, and it was not good. I think objectively, I've watched 20, 25 confirmation hearings in my life. I'm a bit of a nerd in that way.
You're not getting any of that back, man. Yeah.
No, I'm not. But it does come in use for like this 6-minute segment on PX
right now.
So
it's really important.
Right now, this is my Super Bowl, right? I've watched at least 25 of these confirmation hearings in my life. This is by far the worst one I've ever seen before in my entire life. I have never seen anyone more incompetent, unqualified, and just ignorant of what the job calls of them. And I mean, even the questions are brutal. I mean, we'll get into like the policy things here, but they were pressing him on his alcoholism, and he said that he would stop drinking if he got the job, which is horrible. He wouldn't commit to not drinking on the job either. Then they were quizzing him about his multiple affairs, and having children with multiple women. And they're just like, you couldn't follow, what was it? Tim Kaine said you couldn't follow all these oaths, right, to your wives. How can we make sure you're going to follow the oath to the United States? Which I don't know if that's really an effective talking point, but the point's there. And he just said, well, I'm not a perfect person. I'm working on it. Those are two, like, just right off the bat, not a good start. But then they started getting the policy questions, right? And the Republicans on the committee mostly focused on like cultural issues inside the DoD, like pronouns or DEI hires. Tommy Tuberville said that 2 Navy SEALs, you might know Tommy Tuberville, he's a senator from Alabama. He was used to be the former head coach of Auburn. And he said that he had met with 2 Navy SEALs who were just serving overseas. Then when they came back, they had to sit through an hour-long diversity, equity, and inclusion training, and then they immediately quit and left, which I thought, like, I don't know if that's true or not, but, like, it is a little funny. Like, all right, I got shot at, but now I can't sit through an hour-long meeting. So he said that's kind of what they focus on. But then Democrats started asking, I wouldn't say they're hard questions. They should have been slam dunks for him. They asked him to name the countries in ASEAN, and he could not, and that was rough. He also would not commit to the United States following the Geneva Convention. The United States is not party, I believe, to all the Geneva Conventions, but it does follow them. He also refused to state whether he would follow an unlawful order given by President Trump to deploy the military against civilians. He would not commit to that, and he also refused to give an answer. So, I mean, outside of the alcoholism and being a bad moral character and being unqualified, not knowing what he's doing, he also doesn't really seem interested in, like, following the Constitution or, like, pretending to. What are your thoughts on Hegseth?
There's a lot here. So, first off, the something we have to keep in mind that is it appears to be relatively unique to Trump, but there is a loyalty test involved with Trump's appointees. We've seen that now from his time in office. So I think that there's a part of that here where Hegseth has to be careful to toe the line and make sure that Trump knows that he's his guy. So you got to keep that back in mind. Probably something going through his mind as he's answering these questions. I hate the amount of time spent on the personal stuff. I just I wish that stuff mattered. It clearly doesn't, and it hasn't for some time in these leadership positions. So, like, yeah, the dude's kind of a sleazeball when it comes to a lot of things in his personal life, no doubt. If you have a limited amount of time to ask somebody questions and dig into whether or not they should be the Secretary of Defense, I don't know that any of the time should have been spent on that. Like, we knew all of that stuff. And those same accusations, unfortunately, are, I mean, again, to go to Trump, like, this was the thing that was this is why Trump would not get elected, right? These personal stories about him would come out and it would tank him. And that didn't happen. And it seems like people are still like, no, this time that's going to be the thing that does it. So I think that's a complete waste of time. Maybe it got some media bites. I don't know.
I agree. I think that the wife inquiries, why did she and your wife, completely pointless. I think there is valid concern over the drinking problem because he is in the chain of command for nuclear weapons. I think that's valid. And I also think it was valid to ask him about the sexual assaults, but he just said they're all anonymous smears.
So the other aspect then when getting into the policy stuff is interesting here because you're right, he didn't, and we've talked about this before. When he was first nominated, my pushback was it seems like his focus is on cultural issues, which could be a great setup for an undersecretary of defense. But for the secretary of defense, I think there's other priorities that should take the cake. And this hearing didn't convince me that there's anything more important than some of those cultural issues, which I still don't think are the number one concern for our military. I'm not going to say they shouldn't be addressed or anything like that. There's always things we can do to improve, but not knowing some of the key aspects of being a Secretary of Defense, I think, is a little concerning. And I just look. I like somebody younger moving into the position. I like the idea of a change agent in the Pentagon. I like it not being a career military person. I think those are all net benefits. I like it being somebody whose time in the military was as a combat leader at the junior officer level. I think that's all really, really positive. Those are all good things. Could we find those good things in somebody who also has some degree of an experience managing a large organization, or some time working at the strategic level of understanding geopolitics at a think tank maybe, or who knows? Like, it can be from the blob, it can be from outside of the blob. I don't really care. It just seems like there's a lot of shortcomings here that, like, I feel like folks are trying to gloss over by the fact that he was in the military. There's a lot of people that were in the military that would check a lot of these boxes that also have foreign policy experience or an understanding of international alliances and a prioritization of Asia Pacific versus the Middle East versus Europe. And, like, we're not touching any of that stuff at all. I don't like that.
I agree. I also was about to pull this up here. They kept reiterating the claim that he'd be the only Secretary of Defense to serve in active combat, at least in modern history, which is just not true either. I believe Mark Milley served in combat.
He wasn't the Secretary of Defense.
You're right. He was not Secretary of Defense. But Lloyd Austin, he commanded. What did he do? He did something with Iraq, right?
Served in Iraq.
But a lot of them were grunts before they were commissioned officers who fought in wars, whether it was Vietnam, the Persian Gulf, or Iraq. But I guess a lot of them, those who served in Iraq 2003, were a bit higher. But regardless, he's not the first, and I don't know why they keep reiterating that. And also, Pete Hegseth has the same. He's a major in the Army National Guard, which is what you are, Preston. And I don't know. I mean, do you, like, as we discussed, I believe on our very second episode, I asked you, would you be willing to do the DOD job? And you said no. And I think that kind of emphasizes this. I don't. Pete Hegseth is not cut out for the job. Serving in active combat does not make him equipped for this job. His brain is a stew of memes. And I have a question for you. What did you feel about them? They kept referring to soldiers as the warfighters. Was that very weird to you, or do you think, nah, that's fine?
No, it's just maybe you don't hear that much in kind of traditional media, but throughout my time in service, we've often referred to them as warfighters. You kind of use the interchangeably with soldiers. Yeah. I've always kind of liked the term, actually, because I think it kind of drives home what you're doing and why you're doing it. You're not there to do PowerPoint slides. You're there to fight wars. So the term's pretty regularly used.
Gotcha.
There was an aspect in here, though, that I thought was worth hitting on around quotas for women in the military. There was some stuff thrown around that just wasn't correct at all, and it's frustrating to see. I should preface this with, I like the general direction that this pick is going. Again, younger, not a general. I don't like 4-star generals or chiefs of staff moving into the SecDef role. I think that's a bad precedent to set. I don't think we should do that at all. They're far too close to the people directly in the chain of command. But either way, there was a piece in there about quotas for females in the military. I've never been in a unit where that's a thing in any way, shape, or form, or even like suggested. So I'm not exactly. I've seen folks try to like rephrase that in one direction or another, but I've never even been in an organization where that's a discussion, let alone a formality. So I don't know. I think that I don't want to say that's made up, but in my experience at this point, that's never been a thing.
No, I believe it was made up. Yeah, because I think a Democratic senator pressed him on it later or something. But yeah, no, he said there needed to be a quota, and that just wasn't true. Joni Ernst, everyone going into this, she's the senator out of Iowa. She served in the U.S. military, and she left because she was sexually assaulted. It's her big story, what she campaigned on. And when it came to Pete Hegseth, people thought we were going to see fireworks, right? Pete is a guy who he served, and we'll get to that part in a second. But he also has been accused of sexually assaulting women, and you would think Joni Ernst would have something to say about that. I mean, these are the stances she takes, but she does not. She says she will be voting for him, which is the one I thought would be the biggest issue there. But the other issue here of Pete Hegseth, and they kind of got like a little bit into it during the hearing, is that Pete was supposed to be part of the Army National Guard that was deployed to Inauguration Day after January 6th. And the DOD flagged him and said he can't serve. He's too closely aligned with white supremacist groups. And they noted a white supremacist tattoo he has on his chest. And so he was removed from that National Guard unit that was supposed to protect the Capitol because he was deemed too much of a potential threat to the proceedings happening. I don't know how you can put someone like that in. I don't know. I agree with you that perhaps it needs to be an outsider, someone not in the chain of staff. But Pete Hegseth here, that feels like the nail in the coffin on top of everything else, at least to me.
Yeah, let me push back on that one for a second, though, because that process there, the insider threat concern in the U.S. military has been a thing for a while. It's nothing new. I mean, we just saw this terrorist, soldier turned terrorist down in New Orleans, right? Fell victim to Islamic State propaganda. And when we're downrange, it's always been a very real threat, not just mostly with our partner forces, but you're always looking inside the force for any sort of concerns that could be a risk. So in a case like that, it would not have been top-down identified. It would have been bottom-up driven to a degree. So it's not like DOD would have been sitting at their computers at the Pentagon saying, wait a minute, this dude over here has a tattoo we don't like, because they wouldn't have any way of actually getting to that information. It would have been people in the organization, in his unit, saying whether it's the tattoos or something he said or something he believed or who knows. I don't know the whole story there. But it would have started at the unit level of somebody around him flagging that and saying, I'm concerned that this could be an issue. And at some point up the chain, somebody made the determination, cool, not worth the risk. Have them, like, they're not going. That said, it's so, I think it probably would be inaccurate to say like the Department of Defense made the decision. That decision was probably made at a pretty low level. The other side of that is it's very similar to like a no-fly list. Like you can get added to a no-fly list for any number of reasons, and you don't necessarily need to be notified. And like you haven't been proven to do anything wrong in the court of law. You're not guilty, but the same thing right here. What if Ben Wilson is on the no-fly list? I would say that disqualifies him from any number of jobs in the United States. He can't serve there. And you're sitting here going like, wait a minute, what if it was a mistake? We don't even know why I was added. So that's one that I know there's been a lot of debate about the tattoos, this, that, and the other. But the fact that he was removed from that detail is interesting. Like that stands out for sure. To me, it shows that people within his organization had some concerns. But I'd be hesitant to throw that down as like a hard and fast on anything.
No, that makes sense. Do you think Hegseth's getting through here?
I was going to ask you.
Okay, my take is
you
yes.
tell me.
I think yes.
Okay.
I think if they were honest broke, I think if Trump was not applying pressure, there's not a chance. But I think there's too much pressure. He's getting in. Thoughts?
It's hard for me to tell. I haven't watched 25 hearings. And a part of this is like you're always going to get like the one side pushing the other because they can, and then you're always going to get the same side kind of offering softball questions like how many rounds can you fit in a M4 magazine or whatever some of those silly ones were. So it's hard for me to read between the lines, but from what I'm reading, it sounds like most people think that he's going to get it. So
I think he does. I mean, a lot of he didn't meet with any of the Democrats on the committee.
Is that normal, abnormal? Where's that sit?
Very abnormal. Usually you
Okay.
meet with all the senators who will meet with you, and then there's like some camaraderie, right? Because the Senate, I mean, it's not the House, right? The House is crazy. The Senate, I mean, these are like functioning adults. So like, there's camaraderie that gets built, and they express their concerns, and you respond. He didn't meet with any of the Democrats on the committee, which is, I assume, I mean, they don't need Democratic votes for this. So I assume that is part of the strategy, and I assume Trump likes that. So was that? But speaking of Trump, he gets sworn in here, which means
Well, can we
Joe
go to
Biden.
one more? Can we go to one more nominee? Tulsi Gabbard for DNI has been kicked down the road indefinitely. Correct?
That's correct. I don't think she gets in.
Is the hearing being kicked down the road indefinitely? Asking my guy that understands Washington more than I do. Is that like a polite way of people saying like this isn't going to happen? We got to find somebody else, or is this kind
It's
of
a way of
thing?
saying so? Like right now, there are a handful of nominees. For the most part, all these nominees are going to get in with no issues. Probably 90% of votes. Like Rubio and all these other ones, like Doug Burgum in the Department of Interior, he's getting in flying colors, right? They're all fine for the job. But there are a few, Pam Bondi, DOD or DOJ, Pete Hegseth, what's their name? The new commerce guy who wants to do the tariffs, him, and Tulsi Gabbard, and then RFK. These are like the flashpoints, right? And so the reason she's been kicked down the road is that if you have her hearing going on while Pam Bondi's is going on, while Hegseth is going on, then you kind of have this and Bessinet's happening. You kind of have to pick and choose, right? Because obviously the president should get the cabinet he wants, but that's not always true, right? The Senate's like, well, no, some people are crazy, so we're going to pick and choose. And for Biden, I believe he only got one or two rejected, and Trump the first time around, I think he got everyone. This one time, so the reason they're kicking it down the road is more so to figure out the math. Because in this thing, right, so say you approve Hegseth, but you reject Bondi, or you approve both of them. If you approve both of them, then when Gabbard comes up, you can say, see you later. And the president can't really get mad because you can say, well, we let Hegseth in, and so we don't have to make the sacrifice to let Gabbard in. So that's basically what's happening. I hope I explained that well.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so
wait and see. Did you see one of the interviews with there is some senator? I should have a better source on this, and I'm just going off memory. But he said he questioned her about her trip to Syria, and she said, "Well, actually, I was supposed to go to Lebanon, and when we landed, we found out we were in Syria." I was like, "Listen, that doesn't happen.
No,
that's not a thing."
She is not getting in. There's not a chance. I think that's. I do wonder if they're going to keep it empty or what. But yeah, indefinitely is a way of saying it's not happening. But it's also try to help the math to allow them to reject her if he doesn't rescind her.